welcome everyone. So Erin and I are going to have a lot of fun with you today going through the Price is Right. Pricing is a really big topic out there, isn't it, Erin?
Yeah, and for any of you Happy Gilmore fans, we were just talking about that, Emily. Hopefully you get the if you've seen the movie, you can understand why we named it what we named it. But no, you're exactly right. This is one of the big hot buttons that we've seen as in a lot of markets, not every market, but in a lot of markets, we're seeing inventory going up, days on market going up. And no longer is it a guarantee that when we list it, it sells.
That's exactly right. And we're also experiencing additional client care, right? Additional seller care, just holding this active inventory that we haven't had to do for a hot minute. So, Erin, why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, first off, that very important slide that you just cruised right past. Of course, with anything we talk about, with any lead gen we're doing, we want to be TCPA, do not call compliant. And so what we're going to share with you today is, yeah, there you go. What we're going to share with you guys today is not theory. It's not good ideas. This is what you and I have learned from the trenches doing this at a high level. Agreed?
Yep, that's right.
And, Emily, when I got into real estate, I had no idea that I was actually going into sales. Did you?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, well, see, I had no clue. You know what? And by the way, real estate is not just any sales. Real estate is probably the most aggressive form of direct to consumer sales that you could be in. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I do agree.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us, maybe we see houses, maybe we see real estate, and it sounds like a great idea. And then we get into it, and it's like, I did not know exactly what I was getting into, and we've got to figure it out. And so the way that I backed into it is, believe it or not, I was 19 years old, and this is a long time ago. And I was introduced to someone who was flipping houses. And I heard this guy's story. And at 19, as any of us at 19 do, that's easy. I can do that. So, and keep in mind, this was before all the cable TV shows. There was no HGTV, there was no TLC, there was no Bravo, there was no Selling Manhattan on Netflix. There were exactly two shows, Emily, two shows. And they were only on PBS on Sunday morning, and it was Home Time. Did you ever watch that show?
No.
Okay, it was Home Time. And then the other one, Bob Vila Home Again. Do you remember that one?
No.
Oh, of course you were, because you were like 2 years old back then. All right. And by the way, if you missed them, you couldn't go back and watch them again. It was either you show up at the time it was on or you're done. But that was it. So it wasn't what it is today. And so what happened is, I reached out to that agent that this guy referred me to. And before long, I started buying properties and flipping them. And then 3 years go by, I graduate college. I enjoyed what that agent, had done for me. And I was inspired. And I said, hey, I'll get my real estate license. So off I went. Now, it quickly dawned on me, as you can imagine, I had no idea what I was doing. I knew how to go and fix a property because that's what I learned on TV. But in terms of real estate, I had no idea I was getting into sales. And so I go out, I interview all the offices, I sign up for one, and they recommend a seminar. So what do I know? I go to a seminar and I learn the ins and outs of cold calling, which, by the way, back then you could do without the anyway. So not knowing any better, got on my phone book, and off to the races. Now, dial after dial, call after call, nothing was happening, as you can imagine. Now, I know your story is different because you got on the phones and magic was happening left and right, correct?
Maybe.
Yes. See, okay. Poor old me, nothing was working, right? I had a piece of paper with words on it, and yet I was following it, but it wasn't working very well. And I needed to figure that out. So finally, some poor soul agrees to let me come over. And as with the calls, I had a piece of paper, it had words on it, but it wasn't working. I was doing the presentation like I was taught, nothing was happening. So I went on appointment after appointment for a year, nothing was happening. I had to figure that out. So one day, out of pure luck or pity, someone said yes, right? And now I had a listing. And guess what? It wasn't selling. I had no idea pricing, none of it, right? And here's what's interesting. Everyone here has access to the conversations. We're going to go through those today, right? The systems, everyone has access to all the magic pills, especially coming from MAGA camp. We heard it all, correct? But
Yep.
the question, Emily, would you agree? It's like, why are some people winning with it and some people aren't? And, I had all the tools and yet I wasn't winning. And so that's when I had to go on a journey to figure it out. And so I spent 13 years, now 20 years, right? But I spent 13 years working and studying what those great listing agents were doing in the business. And very quickly, I did figure it out. I learned, and here's the key, it's the nuance needed in the conversations, right? And the systems and in your schedule to make sure we succeed at a high level. So I went from not being able to take a listing to save my life to taking over 1,000 listings in just a few short years. And so your story is very similar. And what we're teaching here in Mega Listing Agent was developed so you don't have to go on that journey that you and I went on, right? Year after year, call after call, listing after listing to figure out. We're bringing the knowledge from all those years of hard work and we're distilling it down for you guys so you can get what's most important to make sure that you're taking more listings and today selling more listings so you guys can make more money and earn your time back. Would you agree?
1,000%. And I think that that's really powerful in today's time, right? Knowing that we've got a list to last. We want to take the market share. And the question is, when we come out of the shift, right, out of the shifted market, because our markets are shifting, it's here, right? So when we come out of it, what do we want our business to look like? And that's where we lead with listings, right? You're creating the inventory, you have the inventory, and you're creating that market share such that you have a business on the outside of this, right? Real estate isn't running you, you're running a business.
That's right. So as we start here, in setting pricing expectations at the listing appointment, this is some of that nuance that isn't in all of those words on paper that we all have access to. This is stuff that we've learned from the trenches on, we better know this because it's going to make it a lot easier to educate the seller when it comes to pricing and price reductions. So what does that look like?
Yeah, well, I think it starts out with being the economist of choice, right? We've all heard that, being the economist of choice, be the economist of choice. And yet, what does that mean? What market numbers do we need to review on a weekly basis or checking our hot sheets daily to know what does a seller need to know such that we don't information overload them, right? And yet we educate them such that they have trust and clarity in what is happening. So, Erin, what I always look at with local market metrics is the month supply to start, right? The month supply will tell us what market that we're in. So, less than 5 months of supply is a seller's market. 5 to 7 months is a balanced market, and over 7 months of month supply is a buyer's market. So, understanding, hey, is it good news? Are we still in a seller's market? Are we transitioning to a buyer's market, right? In a balanced market, or are we already there? For those of you who know your month supply, what market are you in? A seller's market or buyer? Put it in the chat for us so we can kind of gauge that. The second is knowing how many properties are pending weekly, right? Sometimes the misconception is when a seller is stubborn on their price, Erin, they are like, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait. Well, 174 buyers purchased a home in just the last 7 days. Is now really the time to wait, right? So sometimes these numbers can help you even objection handle on that. Average days on market, average list price to sales price, number of price reductions weekly, and number of expireds and cancels and withdraw weekly. Erin, why do we want to look at the number of price reductions and expireds, cancels, withdraw weekly?
Because for all of you that are putting seller, 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 the indication to what it's trending towards is in that last point. When we see expireds, cancels, and withdrawals increasing, as most of you are, well, yes, while we might today be in a seller's market, it's trending towards something different. Now, again, maybe we're trending from an extreme seller's market to barely a seller's market, right? I'm not saying all of a sudden it's going to shift the other way, but this is the information that we need so we can be the economist of choice with the seller so that we can show them that it's not just, hey, it's a seller's market. Yeah, it is, but look at where it's trending. We went from, I was just looking at someone's numbers yesterday in the Carolinas. They were at a 2-month supply. Now they're inching up to 4-month supply. Still a great market, but not as much of a seller's market as it was. Still sellers, but not as much. So that's why it's important.
Yep, that's exactly right. All right, let's go to the next slide.
And that's the nuance we're talking about. It's not just, hey, I can spit a number out, but I can now tell you why you should know the importance behind that number based on what we're seeing.
Exactly right. So a CMA review, determining versus interpreting the market. Erin, I don't know about you, but sometimes I felt like it was me versus the seller in pricing conversations, versus us versus the market. So in order to go from me versus you to
Yeah.
us versus the market, I created a dialogue where I just said, hey, look, I unfortunately don't get to determine the market. I wish I did. It would make my job way easier, right? And yet, my goal for our time together today is for us to interpret the market such that we can determine together what top dollar in today's market is for your home. Fair enough?
Yes, fair. So, another way to say that, I love when you say it's, us versus the seller versus us versus the market. Because when I was sharing that story and why I wasn't getting listings, is because it's me versus them.
Yeah.
And it was, I want to be right. Right. And I learned a quote, from a rainmaker later on that I worked with. You can be right or you can be rich. And if you want to be rich, it's not you versus them. It's us versus the market. What's the market telling us? Not what I'm telling you, because I wanted to tell them the right price. Hey, I'm smart. I looked at the scene. Here's what you have to list it at. And they said, yeah, thanks, next. Right. But to your point, when it's what's the market telling us? Where's the market telling us we need to be priced? Now it's us versus the market, not me versus them. That's nuance. Keep going.
Yeah, I think it's also important, I like to use humor. So for those of you who like humor as well, you may resonate with this. Of when we determine a price, right? I would joke and say, hey, I don't price like Walmart. And what I mean by that is I price in increments of 5 or quarters. And the reason why is when you go on search engine optimization websites where buyers are looking for homes, whether that's through our website, whether that's through Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, just to name a few of the top ones, they're putting in 300 to 350, 350 to 400, right? 400 to 500,000. They're not putting in 399.9 to 449.9, right? So if we're on the brink, so if I'm a buyer and I'm looking and I go 4 to 450 and you're priced at 399.9, you miss that buyer because of $100. So pricing is a strategy. And it's the same thing with reductions. It's the same thing with just putting it out there. So the other thing is when we look at pricing in today's market, it's really, really important that we look at the active competition. If I were a buyer, okay, and I were to shop this home, this seller subject property, what are the 2 to 3 other homes that I would tour in conjunction? How long have they been on the market? What's their starting price? Where are they at now? Have they had any reductions? Were they significant, right? And I may call the agent and just say, hey, I have some questions about the property. Have you got a lot of activity on it? We're all in this together as agents. And so I think it's really important to understand active competition to put the seller in the perspective of what's happening now versus what happened then, right? Because our 6 month ago solds are not today's numbers for pricing.
Yeah, you know what, Emily, going back to the pricing increments, because there might be some people that push back and maybe they disagree about the 5s or 25s and whatnot. What's important about it and the takeaway here is you have a point of view and you're confident in it, correct?
Yes.
Right. You said we don't price like Walmart because buyers don't search like Walmart, right?
Yep.
And
That's
you
right.
have a point of view, and that point of view exudes confidence. And that's the nuance. And maybe people listening might have a different, perspective on they like 999, they like 888, they like other things. It
Yep.
doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a point of view and you deliver it with confidence.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's really important when we're getting them looking at their active competition to say, would you say this property is nicer, not as nice, or similar as yours, right? Go through the photos with them, slow down to speed up. A lot of agents are going in with a piece of paper that is a CMA or a CMA packet, and the sellers don't understand. It's gibberish to them, right? And they're not going through it. Or if they are going through it, it's confusing, right? And they're just nodding along and then saying, we need to think about it. Yep, we've got some other interviews, right? It's important to engage with them and go, photo. Most people are visual or kinesthetic learners. So going through, so they have the perception of where the market's at based on the trend line.
Yeah. And the only caveat here is, as we're doing this, is we also have to remember, and this goes back to that nuance, is that their home is their castle. So while you might look at a photo of a home that in your opinion is superior, and they look at it and say, nope, ours is better, have a little flexibility. You can be right or you can be rich. Have a little flexibility with their castle.
Yeah. All you have to say is help me understand. And I think that you've got a great property here as well. Help me understand, what specifically makes your home better.
Yep.
Love that. All right, next slide. All right, Erin. So what are the 4 metrics that we should identify and set the expectation of ahead of the first week of the market?
Yeah, Emily, here's what we learned on our journey out in the trenches is that when we are talking about pricing and when we're evaluating, are we priced right or not? I feel isn't going to get it done, right? I feel maybe doesn't work. Sellers need clarity. They need black and white. They need a scientific formula that we could both look at independently and come to the same conclusion. And so when we're setting the pricing expectations at the listing appointment, and by the way, if you have a listing and you didn't do this, but you need to after the fact, you can have this conversation anytime. Ideally, it's upfront. We're giving them 4 metrics. Now, remember, you can go to NAR and pull the research. NAR says 2 weeks or 10 showings. All I'm doing is expanding to give a little bit more color to it, right? And so what we're saying is, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, we know what we do on the marketing side works. The only thing we're testing when we put the home on the market is the price. Now we're going to know within the first 2 weeks, based on the feedback and the activity, exactly how we're priced compared to the market. And when we're priced right, here are the 4 metrics that we're going to see to know that's the case. Number 1, 3 to 5 showings per week. Private showings, not open house activity, private showings. Number 2, buyers coming back for second looks. Because remember, as days on market is going up, buyers have the luxury of seeing the property and bringing their family back, right? Yeah. Number 3, positive feedback from the agents and their clients. And of course, number 4, offers or talk of offers. If we're seeing those 4 metrics in week 1 and again in week 2, the market's telling us we're probably where we need to be. If we're not seeing those metrics, then the market's telling us that we've pushed it too far. And at that point, we'll know, based on the metrics, where we do need to be priced in order to get your home sold and get you off to wherever it is you're going. And that too is a scientific formula, correct?
Yep.
All right, and that's the next slide. So if we're looking at the metrics, right, and we're seeing some but not all, maybe we're getting the activity but no second looks, mixed feedback, no offers, then we're probably 5 to 7% off. If it's crickets, right? Maybe we're getting 1 showing, 2 showings, but that's it, nothing else, then we're probably 8 to 12% off. Would you agree?
Yep.
This is science. I promise you, this is a scientific formula that if you use it 99.9% of the time, it's going to work out the way that it should.
And so even with that, Erin, what I want to note here is when working with sellers, if they're getting really good activity and they're not getting talks of offers or offers, they will adhere more towards the 5%. Because if you say 5 to 7, they're going to go to the bottom number, right? On the less than 5 showings, maybe it's 1 to 2 or whatever, you say 8 to 10, we're going to median that out. We're going to say, 10%. So really the goal is always a 5 or 10%. And yet there's the psychology behind it is pick your number such that they kind of choose the correct number, right? Yeah. So we're not telling them.
Yeah. You know what? The biggest challenge right now, Emily, in this conversation with all of our great clients, the sellers aren't the challenge. It's the agent saying, but no, it's priced right. the last one sold and let's go back to the metrics. The metrics don't lie. So we have to be careful as agents not to buy into anything other than it's a scientific formula.
Yep.
How many of your clients have tried to convince you that they priced it right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All of them. Yes. Well, and I think that that's also where we have to go back and we have to go, it's either location, condition, the market, our marketing, or its price, right? So it's not the market because everyone in this, I didn't even see anyone that said balance. Everyone said a seller's market when I was scrolling.
There's one person moving towards neutral.
Moving towards, I did see that after you asked that question. So everyone's in a seller's market, right? So it's not the market. It's not your marketing. If you've sold a house, you can sell 100. If the location's good and the location's moving based on the location, trends, then it's not that. And if the condition of the home is decent, right? Then it's price.
Price and condition, location, price trumps all of it.
That's right.
Yep.
Yep.
It's a scientific formula. I'm going to keep saying that because that's where agents miss it. They want to bring creativity to it. No, it's a formula.
Yep, that's right.
And by the way, someone had asked us recently in our Facebook group, well, but I'm in a high price point market. Well, yeah. Emily, I'm in a high price point market in San Diego. You are in an affordable price point market in Springfield, Missouri. It doesn't matter whether you're selling houses for $1 million or 100,000. The 5 and 10% rule, right? It holds true across price points, across markets.
Yep, that's right.
And to Tom, based on what data have you come up with this formula? Well, number one, NAR has all the data. And number two, 20 years of going on this journey and figuring this out. 1,200 listings sold, right? On figuring this out.
Well, and I think the other thing that I want to point out too is that when you look at average list price to sales price, there are a lot of buyers out there, and maybe some of you have them where you're like, oh, well, they don't want to offend the seller. Well, they don't want to, and it's typically a 10% or 5% less offer because we've been in such a strong market where that hasn't been the normal, right? So if you even think from a buyer perspective of if a buyer writes an offer and it's 10% off, it's pulling those people back out as well. It's getting ahead.
Yeah, we could talk for days on this. For days. Can. All right, next slide.
Yep.
All right, Emily, how do you deal with this one? They want to overprice. What seller doesn't? Show me that seller. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So if they want to overprice, it's just important to present what the possible outcomes are. So I have come up with 3 outcomes that I have seen when I've overpriced properties, right? None of which get the result of what the seller's hiring me to do. So I just acknowledge, right? Hey, I can appreciate that you're looking to make the most amount of money, right? I'm looking to make that happen as well. And yet there are 3 things that I find when pricing over the market. May I explain? Yes. Great. High online views, no showings. Now, this does nothing for you because if buyers aren't touring the home, they're not purchasing the home, are they? No. Great. The second is even more frustrating. We have a high volume of showings and no offers because now that the kids are having to make the bed, you're having to put the coffee cup, the dog's up, all of that. It creates chaos and stress, right? With a lot of showings. And when that results to no offer or your hard work doesn't pay off, that's not a win-win, right? The last is even the most frustrating, which is a lowball offer. You get somebody who is looking for a deal or an investor and they write a percentage off of, the list price. And that's less than what we're talking about today. So you're not hiring me to list your home. You're hiring me to sell your home. And what the market's telling us top dollar is 450,000. So let's go ahead. Let's list it at 450 such that you can get on to move closer to your grandkids in Florida.
Oh, and by the way, seller, is there such thing as underpricing a listing?
Absolutely not.
Why? Because value is like water. It will always find its natural level. If, God forbid, we've underpriced your home, guess what's going to happen? We're going to get a line of people out the door, wrestling in your driveway, bidding the price up to where the market value is. So while it's very easy to overprice and it comes, right, with some dangers, it's impossible to underprice because the market always corrects.
Truth. All right, let's move on.
We speak the truth, Emily. We speak the truth.
All right. So we have our next webinar, which is next Wednesday at 1:30, talking about what is the mega listing agent. So we get asked this a lot, Erin. People are like, what is the course? What does it cover? What does it entail? This is a live open Q&A. So you can ask us anything. What does this course entail? Any questions about the course? We'll tell you about the course.
Let's tell them about it right now, real quick.
Yeah, let's.
Okay. Yeah, so here's what we do in the mega listing agent, right? We've broken it down into the 5 essential models, which are designed to help you take more listings and earn more money, get your time back. And what those models look like is, number 1, lead gen, for Shay, who asked, Emily, we spend a lot of time on lead gen, do we not? We go through it at a high level. Number 2, we talk about the pre-qual process. This is your conversation framework, your objections that you get here. Number 3, we go through the pre-list, which is your package, your appointment prep, the listing file. And number 4, we go through the actual listing appointment. We break that down in great detail. And then number 5, we go through listing management, which, again, price reductions and pricing is part of that listing management. And what we do is we break it down into bite-sized pieces such that you can implement each week throughout the course.
Yep, that's exactly right. So we give you the systems, the dialogues, and the models in order to scale. We go through, I always say it's like a listing A to Z.
Yeah, and listen, some people take the course because they're working with too many buyers and they want to shift to take more listings, right? Some people have too many listings and they don't have the system such that they can get them sold, like we talked about today. Emily, some people, we see a lot of people where the business is running them, they're not running their business.
That's right.
For some people, Shay, it's all about, I just want to find more listings. Let's just start with that one, find more listings. Or if you're like me, I figured out eventually how to go get them. I just couldn't get them signed, right? So I had to go on that journey. So it doesn't matter where you are in the listing journey. We touch on each aspect of that in the course. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that's the power behind what we've created is it's all real. We've like everything in the mega listing agent is proven because we will not teach anything that we haven't done.
Yeah, at a high level. And that's why I love Tom's point in terms of, where we get the data from the trenches, right? Across price points, across different markets, tried and true, not theory from the ivory tower, right? This is from the trenches. And Emily, are we both still in the trenches today?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. All right. So scan the QR code, register for the mega listing agent, and we trust to have a lot of fun September 4th kicking off. Thanks for everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
See you, everybody.